Welcome to Two Open Doors, the podcast that explores our power to open or close the doors of relationship with the important people in our lives. We hope you'll learn from and share your wisdom with our community. Thanks for joining us. In our very special episode from last week, a full-length interview with premier American sexologist Dr. Patti Britton, we visited many important topics in the fields of sexology and sex coaching. Dr. Patti is one of the founders of the field of sex coaching. In our wide-ranging conversation, Dr. Patti and I observed the central importance of pleasure in our lives as humans. We also noted that modern life is not very conducive to our staying in touch with that important aspect of our humanity. In this conversation, Dr. Patti noted that she has started to use the image of a little blue flame as a metaphor for the erotic spark that dwells in each of us. Without that flame, our eroticism lacks an essential ignition source. Many of the things that we encounter in our lives, disappointing earlier relationships, the distractions of modern life, a poor or undernourished self-image, and others, can cause our erotic pilot light to flicker or even to go out altogether. When that happens, we lose our desire and ability to benefit from the flow of sexual energy in our lives. Let's consider an example. This is a topic with which I have significant personal experience. As someone who was raised in a fervently Catholic family, I have had a fraught relationship with my own sensuality and sexuality. While I don't remember having heard sexuality be positioned, by my parents, teachers, and other childhood authority figures, as bad, nor was it positioned as something healthy and crucially important to living a full life as an adult. If anything, sexual topics were rarely if ever mentioned. I don't recall even being invited to have the talk with my parents. The implication that I took away from this lack of discussion was that my sexuality was either something to be confined and avoided, or, at best, that it was something to be treated with distrust and even shame. Somehow, thankfully, my pilot light remained lit through this period of neglect. In retrospect, thinking about the situation from my adult perspective, I realized that there was no ill intent on the part of my parents. I can't speak for the intentions of my other childhood formative influences. They were simply reflecting the generally sex-negative attitudes that seem to prevail in many or most Christian Western religions. Why and how these negative attitudes took root in religions is probably an interesting and perhaps exasperating exploration in its own right, but we won't go into that in this recording. Following on the heels of this sex-negative upbringing came 2 lengthy marriages which proved to be dysfunctional and which left me in an erotic desert. In retrospect, one of my contributions to these failed marriages was my willingness to try to ignore my sensual and sexual desires in these relationships, desires which my partners had no interest in. Thankfully, those relationships were followed by my current blissful 19-plus year marriage to my beloved wife Penny. I now have the wonderful good fortune of sharing life with a partner who loves life and who embraces her own sensuality and sexuality. So let's return to our theme of the blue flame. One of the things that Penny has remarked on and has marveled at is that my pilot light somehow remained lit through all those sex-negative experiences. I too am somewhat pleasantly surprised at that. I think that this was possible because I never accepted the religiously promoted view that we humans are inherently flawed and broken creatures. As an example of that, consider the doctrine of original sin and its implications. Instead, I recognized early on that we are embodied creatures, and that my spirit, however one might choose to define that, is not somehow superior to my physical nature. If anything, I'm immensely grateful that my body is an instrument through which I can experience and appreciate the many wonderful physical experiences that come with being alive. Body, mind, and spirit are intertwined. I find it instructive to consider the many good things that my little blue flame enables in my life. First and foremost, it allows me to kindle my ardor in relationships that have an erotic component. That flame can respond when I connect with someone who is passionate and who, like myself, values sharing the experiences of physical touch and emotional intimacy. My flame allows my interest and arousal to grow, but it also allows me to be responsive to my partner and thus to further fuel the growing connection. Beyond promoting my physical connection with my partner, my blue flame also enables me to ignite and quicken an emotional connection with a partner. Sensuality and sexuality are two aspects of a broader, whole-being connection with another person. For me, and I believe for many people, connecting physically with someone promotes a desire to also connect with them on an emotional plane, so as to express affection and caring. Conversely, if chemistry is present, my emotional level connection with someone can lead me to want to express how I'm feeling about them through touch and through sexual expression. It works in both directions. How can we nurture this flame? Well, as noted earlier in this post, many people find themselves with a flickering or even extinguished pilot light. What, if anything, can be done about that? As the adage says, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Consider what you can do to recognize the importance of your erotic pilot light and to prevent occurrences that might adversely affect it. The first step in that process is probably to look inward by considering what attitudes and belief one holds regarding sexuality. If one is absorbed in sex-negative beliefs, such as positioning sex as a damaging, distracting, or harmful influence in one's life, it's important to reconsider those beliefs. As long as they remain in place, it's likely to be impossible to relax into sexual enjoyment. Instead, consider one of the core tenets of sexology, which is that pleasure is a human birthright. Such a stance goes far toward legitimizing sexuality as an important and valuable part of being a healthy human being. Assuming that one cultivates a positive personal perspective towards sexuality, it's then useful to consider what external forces can impede the healthy exercise of that sexuality. Those forces include the improper exercise of authority to enforce sex negativity. That authority might come from schools, governments, or other organizations that foster sex negativity. One can refuse to bow to such illegitimate authority, or one can go a step further and act to promote positive change in those organizations. The damaging impact of sex-negative influences can be mitigated by staying away from those influences if possible. One can choose to spend time in the company of friends who are sex-positive. One can also avoid associating with sex-negative organizations to reduce the likelihood of absorbing unhealthy programming from them. If one realizes that one's pilot light has been damped by prior experiences, all is not lost. It's possible to restore a vigorous flame. Some possible cures for a weak flame include joining a local sex-positive organization, such as an appropriate meetup group, to validate and reinforce the importance of maintaining a healthy erotic life. Such organizations provide exposure to sex-positive attitudes and beliefs, but in addition, they provide a venue in which one can find relationships that affirm the value of shared pleasure, as well as the attendant awareness of the importance of mutual consent, enforcing one's boundaries, etc. Reigniting a snuffed-out pilot light may also require a willingness to expose oneself to new sensual and erotic experiences. Doing so may deliver some unexpected delights and thus renew one's interest in such experiences. Of course, it's not easy to motivate oneself to try things that may not seem immediately attractive. As in other areas of life, though, a willingness to be experimental can pay big dividends. Being in relationship with someone who is joyful, playful, and sex-positive can help one feel safe to connect with those same qualities in oneself. Sex positivity manifests itself in invitations to connect, sensually and perhaps sexually. Being invited into such a connection can work wonders in rekindling one's flame. In a very real sense, sexuality is life energy. It's an expression of our human desire to share joy and pleasure with another human being. The little blue flame that we harbor inside is a reminder to us of the importance of the erotic in our life. That flame also serves as the spark that enables us to share physical pleasure and emotional connection with another person. We each need to be a guardian of our little flame. To learn more about Two Open Doors and to engage with our community, I'd like to invite you to visit the Two Open Doors private Facebook group, the Two Open Doors meetup group, and the Two Open Doors website and blog at twoopendoors.com. I also invite you to contact me directly by writing to me at Claude, C-L-A-U-D-E, at twoopendoors.com. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll use your inputs to guide my work on future blog posts and podcast episodes. Thanks for visiting Two Open Doors.